Yeah! This is English 3, Unit 12, Part 2, the final part with Professor Neil
and T.A. Younghee.
and T.A. Younghee.
This is the last recording.
The last recording you will have to listen to from the two of us unless you do English 4 and then we start a new book. But this is the last fast track unit and we hope we don't burn down the house. Let's go! So, talking of fire, we're on speaking 1. We're going to go through speaking 1, 2, 3. And so they were talking about that there was a fire in the neighborhood. Take turns explaining what you would have done if you had been near the fire. So here is the example question. What would you have done? I would have activated the fire alarm. So notice again we're on this would have here. So trying to change the past with what you're saying. So looking at the first picture and the first example, you can see the situation down here is to activate the fire alarm.
That means I press the button.
You press the button to activate it. To relate back to the grammar before, because it's to make this an if conditional. Why would you ask this question, what would you have done? So it mentioned before up above here, if you had been near the fire. So here it doesn't add the if. So in my example, I'm adding the if conditional to link it into the grammar that we were listening to before. So if you had been near the fire, what would you have done? That's the point. You are near the fire, so what would you have done? If I had been near the fire, I would have activated, pressed the button, the fire alarm. So you activate the alarm by pressing the button, as Younghee correctly pointed out.
Yeah, you made the fire alarm work.
Yes, beautiful, beautiful. So again, for the second picture, if you had been near the fire, what would you have done? So the question remains the same here for every picture. Oh, we've got our fire here, we've got our fire there. Right. So if I had been near the fire, so again the if conditional remains the same because it's the same in the question. It's just what you would have done changes. I would have left. So notice how left, here it says leave, and the past participle here of leave is left the fire area, meaning I would have exited, I would have run away.
Yeah, you have to remember, use the staircase, not elevator.
Well, we're going to come to the elevators, yes. If you had been near the fire, what would you have done? Now, up to now, we've given the long answer. Here, we can show the fact that you can give a shorter answer, which would save you if you were caught in the fire, because you need to get out. I would have helped people in danger. So notice here, help ends in ed. Help, because help is a regular verb. Much easier for you to remember.
Yes, I don't like English irregular verbs.
No, this is regular. So the last one we're going to look at before continuing and leaving the rest for you to do is, if you had been near the fire, what would you have done? Regular verb again, though you cannot tell by looking at it. You would have had to memorize this or learn it now. I would have called the fire department.
This is 911. But in Korea, we call the 119. How about in the UK?
999.
So 911 is America then?
Yes. So each country seems to have its own 3-digit code for the services, and you call that number, and then they will ask you some questions, and then they will send you the fire service.
So you have to know what number you have to dial in the country where you are.
Yeah, it helps.
Yes.
Here we have all 8 situations, and here's the standard question. If you had been near the fire, what would you have done for each of these? These are 8 things you would have done, and you just say I would have, and then you would change the verb to the past.
Yeah, it's like
participle.
I would have closed the doors and windows, and I would have stayed as low as possible, or I would have avoided using the elevators, and I would have gone to assembly point.
Yeah, so notice it's closed, stayed, avoided, gone.
Assembly point is where people get together.
Meet outside the building, yes. Good. All right, let's look at speaking to. Speaking to an amateur group of actors is reflecting on the success of their first performance. It would not have been possible without everyone's help. Practice making sentences with the partner to explain how each person contributed. Here the grammar changes again. Here it said had. The present, the past form of had moves to the beginning of the sentence here.
Instead, you delete if.
Yes, so we'll show how that works. And here it says, we could not have chosen script. Actually, this is quite positive. The point here is you got not here, not here. So it's saying Sam helped. So, had it not been for Sam, what could you have done?
So, had it not been for Sam...
And honestly, the point is, it's not what could you have done, but what could you have not done. Which is a little important, subtle change here.
So, had it not been for Sam, what we learned earlier, you have to say, if it had not been for Sam.
Yeah, so it's not, we could have chosen the right script, but... So there should be a not here. Before, after the it, and between the could and have. To maintain the fact that Sam helped. Right? But if you used if... See, it could have, if you used if it had not been for Sam, we could not have chosen the right script.
So if you want to remove if at the beginning of a sentence, then the subject it and the auxiliary verb had has to change its position.
Yes.
So had has to move to the front, it has to move to the after head. But instead you can remove if.
It doesn't make it any easier for you if you're learning English, because it's still a long sentence.
But also, Professor Neil, so we can say, had it not been for Sam, or if it had not been for Sam, we can replace with without, right?
Let's not do that for now, okay?
So without Sam, we could not have chosen the right script.
Okay, good, Yonghee. All right, please read Yonghee's book on this. It'll be coming out soon.
It's simple.
Simple. Okay, so let's look at it, go for each one. So, for example, let's look at number 2. Yonghee, I'll ask you the question, you give the answer, and we'll just do a few for practice. Had it not been for Claire, what could you have not done?
Had it not been for Claire, we could not have gotten the performance right.
Yeah, so get becomes gotten. Gotten the performance right. What had it not been for Matt, what could you have done?
Had it not been for Matt, we could not have found a venue.
Find becomes found a venue. Had it not been for Naomi, what could you have not done?
Had it not been for Naomi, we could not have arranged the auditions.
So arranged is regular, arranged with a D, so arrange the auditions. And so on. So we got Dan, assembled, Maya, cast.
Cast it.
Becomes, no, strangely that one's cast. It's not bad. Yeah. You'd think it's regular.
That's irregular.
Yes. We could not have cast the actors. Bill, created, regular, and Wayne, sold the tickets.
So 1, 2, 3, 6, 8. They're all irregular.
Yes.
So there are only 3 regular.
Yes.
Wow, it's difficult.
So always practice. They always like you to practice with the irregulars rather than the regulars. All right, let's look at the rainy season. And then it's self-practice. But last of the speaking. We'll go back a bit. So that's going to be our example. Here, ask and answer questions with a partner about what would have happened if the weather had been nice last weekend. So notice here, last weekend. What would you have done? So as you say here, what would you have done if it hadn't rained last weekend? So the point is, last weekend it did rain. So it hadn't rained here means it did rain last weekend. Again. And if it hadn't rained, so if rained last weekend, I would have taken my dad to the baseball game. So last weekend it did rain and I did not take my dad to the baseball game. So there's a lot of negative about things in the past with not, even though it did rain.
So we also can say had it not rained last weekend instead of if it hadn't rained last weekend.
And then, so if, yes, exactly.
So then, but the answer of remain close is the same. I would have past participle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Youngie, what would you have done if it hadn't rained last weekend?
If it hadn't rained last weekend, I would have held a garage sale.
Garage sale. So there was no garage sale last weekend because it rained. What would you have done if it hadn't rained last weekend?
If it hadn't rained last weekend, I would have had a picnic in the park.
As you notice, have is repeated here. I would have
they're
had.
different.
Yes, this
the first one is auxiliary have, which refers to the present participle tense marker, but the red hat is meaning like a have, main verb.
As I say, Yonghee's book on grammar will be coming out.
When?
Well, when you finish writing it.
Will you buy one?
Of course I'll buy a copy, and I hope you can use the money to play miniature golf.
Ooh,
so let's just go
that
back
looks
there.
quite fun.
Yeah, just going back. Here, number 4, go to miniature golfing.
Wow, that looks quite fun.
Alright, so here, like, hey. So miniature golf is a great game. I mean, I wished places like Gwangali Beach had a miniature golf. It is so much fun.
It looks great fun.
And it involves a lot of luck.
Hole
in one! Here we go.
Wow.
Hole in one!
Wow, she's great.
Yes. Miniature golf. Should come to Korea soon. What would you have done if it hadn't rained last weekend?
If it hadn't rained last weekend, I would have gone miniature golfing.
Yes. Here, golfing becomes a gerund, which is something for a different grammar day. Good. So those are the questions. It gives you an idea that something happened in the past, it rained in the past, and because it rained, you didn't do something, but you wish you had done it. But what would you have done if it hadn't rained last weekend? Is created these situations that you didn't do. That's the power of language. Now, there are 2 sections on self-practice. We will give you a little bit of help with them. Fill in the blanks with the correct form of the verbs in parentheses.
Round bracket.
Round bracket. So it's got to stay. If I had stayed longer. So you notice you're adding the past tense of had. And there's no modal here. Okay. So the modal is in the second part. The second clause. So she would have been caught if she. And then you got try. Had tried to sell the stolen artwork. Here, if you hadn't forgotten, your purse, we wouldn't have missed the bus.
Because you forgot your purse, we missed the bus.
Yeah. I wouldn't have believed if I hadn't seen it myself. So I saw the UFO, and if I hadn't seen the UFO, I wouldn't have believed it. So,
And be square.
and be squire. I saw him coming down to earth. Let's just do number 4. If you had added more salt, the soup would have tasted better. Very useful, number 4. This sort of phrase. If you ever go to a restaurant and you're not happy with the food.
Professor Neil loves food.
Yeah. The other ones?
It looks like
But you can
homework.
see that no, it's not in homework. It's self-practice. Self-practice.
Gives you the color direction to which one you have
So
to use.
these ones involve using the modal, so like would. All right, so will becomes would because it's in past tense modal. So the first one here, may becomes might. I might have left earlier if I had thought about the traffic. So you can say I may have. No one's gonna shoot you. All right, number 2. You wouldn't have ruined the carpet if you had not worn shoes in the house. Very British. Yes, in the United Kingdom, we wear shoes inside the house.
These days, it's like changing.
There are changes. Would have known, will know, better to trust. And number 4, let's give you that one. Would have realised the snack was unhealthy if you had read the label. So you can see some dots come up. Colour matching to assist you, and hope it helps with the practice and prepares you for future English study or classroom activities. We are not doing this classroom activity unless we are in the class. It doesn't, in my opinion, lend well to an online environment. You can have a look at it, read it, practice it if you wish. But we're going to look at classroom activity 2, which does relate to the speaking test.
I just realized, Professor Neil, you've got very new fancy arrow.
Yeah, I'm quite happy with that one.
That one is quite beautiful.
Alright, form a small group. So this is going to come up in the speaking test, if you do the speaking test, and maybe the writing online quiz too.
Inventions. I like inventions.
So here, what would have happened what would daily life have been like if this invention had not been invented? So this invention being the internet, and there's some answers for them. So for example, what would daily life have been like if, alright, this invention had not been invented? So here we have our inventions, and we go through them. If invention had not been invented, it would have been harder to
do homework.
Yeah. You notice here, to find information, So let's go through some examples. Yonghi, you ask me the question, I'll give the answer.
Oh, that would be great. What would daily life have been like if clocks had not been invented?
It's a great question. It's a great question for a great mind. And
who is a great mind?
And so, if clocks had not been invented, there we go, no clocks ever, it would have been harder to be on time for class.
Then it's a great thing.
Yes, probably.
Clocks should have never been invented.
Yeah, and then you could never be late. Misfortunate. What would daily life have been like if...
Steam...
Yonghi, what would daily life have been like if steam engines had not been invented?
Professor, I thought I'm the one who's supposed to ask the question.
Yes. You asked the question.
What would daily life have been like if steam engines had not been invented?
Oh, well, there would have been no steam trains and no kettles or no machines, so it would have been really hard. It would have been harder to travel today. You would have had to walk everywhere or ride a horse. Tough times. I'm just going to click through the next ones, show you the answers. Right, you can read them, but notice here, I no longer have the if. This is a sort of shorter answer. So it would have been hard. If there'd been no electricity, it would have been harder to play online games.
So we can say without electricity, it would have been harder to play online games.
Yes, so we can give the shorter answer.
Using without.
Here, like no elevators, it would have been harder to live in skyscrapers. And
you can walk up like 60 floors.
Exactly. Imagine walking up to your apartment every day in Korea. And if airplanes had not been invented, well, obviously we couldn't fly overseas. It would have been harder to fly overseas. Well, it would have been impossible because you'd need to have wings. Thank you, Yonghee. So there's the example question. There's the example answer. And it's going to pop up in homework. Oh no, in speaking test. If you do the speaking test, you're going to need that. The listening. Let's do our last listening of Professor Neil reading. Ooh. Okay. So we are looking at Christina and Meg. Oh, quite a long dialogue. So I'll be Neil, and Christina, you be Christina. Yonghee, you be Christina.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Christina. You look excited. Is there anything going on?
Hi, Neil. Yes, I just accepted a job at a community college.
Awesome. How did that happen?
Do you remember I planned to stay in last weekend because I felt sick? Well, Meg called me and convinced me to have a dinner with her.
And?
If I hadn't agreed to go out, I wouldn't have met one of my old professors. Is there a different reading?
No, it's just the one.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't understand. How is that connected to the new job?
Actually, it's kind of strange. My professor thought I worked at the restaurant. When I told him I was only there to have dinner, he asked me where I worked. Then I told him that I was currently looking for a job.
So if he hadn't made the mistake, you wouldn't have talked about jobs.
Exactly. And when I told him I was looking for work, he said that he knew about an available position. He called his friend at the college and recommended me for the job. Based on his recommendation, I was invited for an interview on the following day.
I suppose the interview went well.
Yes, the interview committee told me that I did really well, and just now I got a call asking if I would accept their job offer. Of course, I said yes. I'm so excited.
That's good fortune. I'm sure you're perfect for the job.
That's how I got in a TA position for Professor Neil.
Yeah, so that was the listen bit. We've done the listen bit. Answers, check the back of the book. As always, so listen. You've done the listening, check the back of the book. Because we're going to move on to the last reading section, which is quite an interesting reading section if you're interested in reading stuff. So first bit is going to listen, and I'm going to read it for you, and then briefly talk about the answers. Stephanie Louise Kowalek parents emigrated from Poland to the United States. She was born in Pennsylvania in 1923. Her father spent many hours outside with her when she was young, and she developed an interest in science. This later motivated her to pursue a Bachelor of Science degree, with a major in chemistry. She also gained an interest in fashion from her mother. Together, these interests led her to her development of synthetic fibers with outstanding strength, which are better known by the name Kevlar. Miss Kowalek planned to become a doctor, so she took a job at DuPont to raise money to pay for tuition. She never went to medical school, but after 10 years working at DuPont, she created Kevlar. She and her team began working on fibers for automatic tires based on an expected gasoline shortage in 1964. She developed a new solution that contained strong fibers, and she found a way to make them even stronger. Today, Kevlar has hundreds of applications. It is used in sporting equipment like tennis rackets and hockey sticks, safety equipment like fireproof boots and cut-resistant gloves, and protective equipment like bulletproof vests and armored cars. If Ms. Kwolek had not developed Kevlar, the world would have been less fun and less safe.
What a great story.
It is a very good story. Shows the importance of immigration. You bring in outstanding people to your country, you get outstanding results, hence America.
Let's check out briefly the answers.
Yep. Stephen Louise Kwolek would
Stephanie
Louise Kwolek would not have been born in Pennsylvania if her parents had not emigrated from Poland to the United States. Ms. Kwolek would not have developed an interest in science if her father had not emigrated and spent many hours outside with her when she was young. If Miss Kwolek had not planned to become a doctor, she would not have taken a job at DuPont. She and her team would not have begun working on fibers for automobile tires. One small change here. Emigrated is gone, and it's just had not spent many hours outside with her when she was young. Note that. Alright, good job. Good job. That's the end of the reading. As we know, grammar is for self-practice. Enjoyed. Well, thank you very, very much. This has been English 3. That is the end of part 2. This has been Professor Neil. And thank you very much to my TA Yon. So bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Farewell.